hard to be fourth because so much has been said. My name is Alexander. I'm Christine's son, Kathy's brother, and Marcus and Sarah and Claudia came kind of into our family, well, not necessarily 18 years ago, but probably 15 or 16 years. I think there was some time there before we got introduced to them. But, wow, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, Marcus, you nailed, you guys, all three of you nailed it. You know, he came into our life 18 years ago when Paul and I were just about to have our first daughter, Madeline, and he kind of got thrust into this. He was at the hospital right when Madeline was born. My mom and Gerhard had driven down from Whistler, and they came to see us in Lionsgate Hospital. And I'm not so sure he had planned on being a grandfather so soon. Marcus and Claudia are probably 10 years younger than my sister and I. And so we were further down the track, and he took to it really well, and in fact became fondly known in our family as Papa G. And you know, Papa G very quickly grew into this role as a grandfather because we repopulated relatively quickly on our side, and we have 6 children between my sister and I, and then obviously he's got 4 more. So quickly he went from 0 to 10, all within the span of a few years, and so that was a lot. And for a guy who was in his late 70s or mid 70s at that time, I'm sure it could have been exhausting. And there were several times where before Kathy and Matt moved on at Whistler to their own place, we were all 8 of us would be staying in the cabin at Whistler, and Gerhard would just pull his hearing aids out, and he would just be sitting there on the couch in total bliss, because he didn't have to listen to Madeline yelling and screaming and fighting with Spencer, who would then be trying to deal with feeding Isabel, and it was just, he was smart, and he decided that if he'd had enough, he could still be in the same room, still be there with my mom, but just pull the hearing aids out and move on with it. And so, as I said, I'm not so sure he was looking for it, but it found him. He was a big thinker, as you guys have heard. You could walk into this room and I could say, yo, I really like the room, Gerhard, what do you think? And he would then proceed to tell me exactly why these squares were like this, why the columns were here, and you could spend an hour talking with him about this. And you know, sometimes it was frustrating and a bit annoying, and other times it was great because it depended on the topic. And that topic, you could get in depth into anything, as we said earlier. You just could go on and on and on about it. And then many times it was wonderful, but in many times I know that it was like, it could be tough. And Gerhard and I viewed Gerhard always as an intellectual, and I think he viewed me as this young kind of business guy, and we would debate things like cars, life, and business, and his approach was very different. He was a very slow thinker, and I was much more of a quick thinker and wanting to move a certain way, and we never really agreed on the path, but we could agree that we were going to go out the door, but how we got to that door was a different thing, and we would argue and debate and kind of go back and forth on that, and it made for a lot of good family dinners, which we enjoyed many of, and it was interesting because it was a different approach, and he always looked at the problem differently, and that is intriguing. And so while we didn't agree, we definitely went out the same door at the end of the day, and so that was interesting. It was really cool. I had lots of opportunity to work with Gerhard over the years. We had a flood at our place at Whistler. He insisted on putting back the floor exactly how it was beforehand, and showed us how to put back this wood floor. And you know, we split many cords of wood, and you know, a number of years ago we took down a lot of trees, and Gerhard and I split 7 cords of wood over a weekend, and he would have been 82, 83, and I was there, and I was wrecked after these 3 days. Our neighbors who'd witnessed Gerhard and I arguing and fighting over the splitter and stacking and how we should stack them and where it should go were just laughing at us because they were sitting on their deck, and the 2 of us were there for hours, day after day, splitting this wood, and we're trying to yelling at my kids to help us, and at the end they stood up and gave us an applause because 2 of us had been sitting there, and they probably thought we were father and son, but they'd been sitting there for hours doing this work, and they just couldn't believe it that Gerhard at that age was doing it, and that anyway, it was a lot of fun. He was a DIY kind of guy. He hated throwing out. So last week we started to throw some stuff out, and I can tell you that there's expiration dates on the food going back to 2013, 2010. Cheese in the fridge. I mean, if he could find a piece of cheese in the fridge that's been sitting there, that Paul and I would say, we're going to get rid of it. No, get rid of that. I'm going to eat it. And he would eat it. And it was amazing to think that he never really got sick. But man, I can tell you, this guy ate a lot of random food, and food that had been sitting there in jars in either the fridge at Whistler or the fridge we just cleaned out at Marina Side or the fridge we just cleaned out at Tapestry. And it got moved from spot to spot. And even today, if you go down into the garage at Marina Side, which has kind of just been left there, there are kind of these barrels of grain that were there because of the pandemic. And he had barrels of grain stored in the garage, ready to be milled in case of the next pandemic or the next war. And he was just prepared. You know, he would tell you that there was no reason to have summer tires on his car. And I can tell you today that Mercedes has winter tires on it. My mom's car has winter tires on it, because why would you buy summer tires when you could run winter tires all year long? It's cheaper. It was cheaper, it was more effective, and you didn't have to go through the hassle of storing them. And that was Gerhard. He did down to a science on trying to be able to do the least with the most maximum input on some things. And on other things, he would just do so much. And like at Christmas dinner, he would be over the table. It would be like days of preparation, and he could flip flop between doing the least and getting a big output, and then doing so much. And it would just then Christmas dinner would be gone in 6 hours, but he would have spent 3 or 4 days preparing. And so it was interesting to see that, because generally sometimes you're kind of one or the other, and he could do both, which was neat. He loved his red wine and baguette. And I can tell you, we saw him consume a lot of those over the years. He loved a good Rickard's Red beer, and then in later years it was a non-alcoholic beer. And he loved going. I had the opportunity to take my mom and Gerhard over the last number of years up for dinner a lot in the summer times, and we had some wonderful meals. And we went out, and it was always a non-alcoholic amber beer. And he would complain if they had the wrong cheap non-alcoholic beer. He wouldn't have it, just didn't like it. He loved new technology. I was encouraged every time I bought a computer just to buy AppleCare, not so I could sign up, so I could give it to him and he could sit there and learn from the Apple Store. He would take my AppleCare and go through that process. He would buy new skis every year. This is a guy who was more skis in our cabin, and they would get sold the next year, and just weird skis, like skis for everything. And still, when we cleaned out the cabin this year, we threw out lots of extra skis that were stashed in the closet, stashed down below, and he loved trying new stuff. He lovingly kept my mom skiing for a long time, which is good. He lovingly taught my 3 kids to ski. It was great. We spent the better part, as I said, of 15 winters sharing this cabinet with her, and we had some good times. And it'll be deeply missed.